It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon in 2007 when Gloria Roberts, a humble waitress at Mel's Diner in Jackson, Mississippi, noticed two small children sitting silently at a booth near the window. They were soaked from the storm, with matted hair, muddy shoes, and hollow eyes. No adults around, no food in front of them, just silence and sadness. Gloria, then 42, had worked at Mel's for nearly 20 years. Life had never been easy for her, single, childless, barely making ends meet, but she always wore a smile and carried a heart wide enough to shelter the world. She wiped her hands on her apron and approached the kids. "Where's your mama or daddy, baby?" she asked gently. The boy, no older than 10, looked up. "We don't got no mama. And daddy, he left a while ago. We just walked from the bus station. We were trying to get to Grandma's, but we can't find her house." Gloria didn't ask another question. She simply nodded, turned around, and brought them 2 hot plates of chicken and biscuits. On the house. She paid for it out of her tips. For the next 3 days, the children returned. She fed them quietly and let them sleep in the back booth after closing. Eventually, child services came. Gloria made sure the authorities found a good foster home, and she sent them off with one final meal and a kiss on the forehead. She never saw them again. 18 years later, it was a blistering summer morning in 2025. Gloria, now 60, had retired early due to a back injury. Her home, a modest one-story with peeling paint, sat quietly on the edge of town. She spent her days tending her garden and talking to her cat, Mabel. No husband, no children, just memories. Then the rumble began. At first, she thought it was a storm. The house shook, the sky groaned. But then she saw it. A helicopter, sleek, black, with polished chrome, descended onto the empty field behind her house. Dust and leaves swirled in wild spirals as a powerful machine settled. Gloria stayed, clutching a watering can, heart pounding. From the chopper stepped 2 figures. A tall man in a tailored navy blue suit, and a young woman in an elegant dress. Security guards flanked them, staying back respectfully. "Ms. Gloria Roberts," the man called, his voice carried by the wind. "You might not remember me." She squinted. His eyes. Those eyes. "But I never forgot you." Her knees buckled, and she dropped the watering can. The reunion. The man was Marcus Lane, now 28 years old, a tech entrepreneur, the founder of a billion-dollar AI startup in California. Beside him was his sister, Tasha, now a nurse and volunteer for homeless youth in Chicago. "You fed us when no one else would," Tasha said, holding Gloria's hands in haze, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You didn't even know our names." "You saved our lives," Marcus added. That kindness changed everything. They had been looking for her for years. Once they had the means, they searched every record, every street. Finally, they found the old employee files at Mel's Diner. And her address. "We didn't come just to say thank you," Marcus said. From the helicopter, 2 men emerged, carrying a leather briefcase and a set of architectural plans. "We're rebuilding your home, top to bottom, solar-powered, fully accessible. And we bought the 3 lots next door. We're building a community kitchen and youth shelter in your name." Gloria's hand flew to her mouth. She couldn't speak. Tasha continued, "And we want you to run the garden, just like you used to. Teach the kids. Be their grandma glow." Tears streamed down Gloria's face. Her knees shook again, but this time Marcus caught her. The legacy of a meal. The news went viral. Former waitress honored by tech billionaires she fed as a child. TV crews came. Politicians visited. But Gloria didn't care about any of that. What mattered were the dozens of children she now saw every week at the garden, learning to grow tomatoes, learning kindness. And how every night the kitchen served free food, no questions asked. She didn't think of herself as a hero. She just remembered 2 hungry children and did what any decent person would have done. But to Marcus and Tasha, she was more than a hero. She was a reason they survived. She was a reason they believed in kindness. And every year, on the exact date they first met, a helicopter landed again, and Gloria, now Grandma Glow, would welcome them home. The sun set behind Gloria's new home, casting golden light over the garden she had planted with her own hands. Rows of tomatoes, peppers, collard greens, and okra glowed in the evening rays. Laughter echoed from the community shelter next door. Children playing soccer on the grass, others painting murals under the guidance of Tasha, who had now moved to Mississippi full-time. Gloria sat on the front porch in a rocking chair, her joints a little stiff, her heart full. A glass of sweet tea rested on the small table beside her, and Mabel the cat purred at her feet. But Gloria wasn't done yet. Chapter 2. The Home That Became a Beacon. As word spread about Gloria's story, more visitors began arriving. Not reporters this time, but mothers, fathers, teenagers, elders, people who had once been forgotten. Some were foster kids. Some were recovering addicts. Some were just lonely, and Gloria welcomed them all. She started a Sunday evening meal tradition, Gloria's Table. Everyone in the neighborhood was invited. No cost, no reservations. Just food, music, and stories. Some nights, Marcus would fly in again, this time not in a helicopter, but in a modest sedan with a trunk full of supplies. He never brought cameras. He just came to chop vegetables, wash dishes, and sometimes give a quiet talk to the kids about perseverance. One evening, during dinner, a teenage girl named Lila asked Gloria, "Did you ever regret not having your own children?" Gloria paused. The question lingered. She looked around the table, at the 20 people laughing, eating, sharing bread and dreams. "These are all my children," she said softly. "I just didn't carry them in my belly. I carried them in my heart." Chapter 3. A Knock at Midnight. But not all moments were peaceful. One summer night, well past midnight, Gloria heard a frantic knock at the door. When she opened it, she found a boy, no older than 12, shivering in the dark. His lip was split, and his shirt was torn. "My name's Jaden," he whispered. "They told me to come here if I was scared." Gloria didn't hesitate. She wrapped him in a blanket, brought him inside, and fed him warm cornbread and greens. As he ate in silence, she called Tasha, who rushed over from the shelter. Jaden had been living on the streets for weeks after running away from an abusive home. But he'd heard from another boy, someone Gloria had once helped, about the house where Grandma Glow saves kids. From that night on, Jaden stayed. He became her helper in the garden, her quiet shadow, and her fiercest defender. He rarely spoke of his past, but he grew into his smile day by day. And he wasn't the last. Others came. Chapter 4. Trouble Brews. Of course, with growth came resistance. Some developers eyed Gloria's land for commercial use. A slick investor offered to buy her entire block. When she refused, permits were suddenly denied. Power outages became frequent. Anonymous complaints filed with the city. Marcus tried to step in with lawyers, but Gloria insisted they fight the right way. So she organized. With Tasha and Jaden's help, she created the Hands of Hope Foundation. They raised funds, wrote petitions, and gathered the voices of every person Gloria had helped. One by one, they came forward, veterans, teachers, pastors, local grocers, and even a retired judge who revealed that Gloria once fed him, too, when he was a boy running from an alcoholic father. When the city council met to vote on rezoning the neighborhood, hundreds stood outside with signs that read, "She fed me when I was hungry." Grandma Glow equals our family. You can't bulldoze kindness. The proposal was defeated. Gloria's home and her mission remained untouched. Chapter 5. The garden grows wider. 5 years passed. Gloria's knees grew weaker, her steps slower, but her legacy only deepened. Jaden, now 17, applied to college. His personal essay was titled "The Seed in Her Garden." He got accepted into every school he applied to. Tasha expanded the shelter into 3 more cities. Marcus launched a tech scholarship in Gloria's name. A documentary crew asked to film her story. At first, Gloria declined. But then she thought of the other kids, still wondering, still hungry, still afraid. If it helps them find their way here, she told them, then let the whole world watch. The documentary, Gloria's Table, premiered online and broke records. Donations poured in from around the globe. Letters arrived by the thousands. And still, Every Sunday evening, Gloria served dinner on her porch. To be continued, because kindness never ends, because one meal can change a life, because one woman, with no riches, no power, and no spotlight, chose to say yes when the world said no. And somewhere tonight, another child hears the name Grandma Glow and begins a long walk toward her light. It had been 5 years since Gloria passed. Yet, in every corner of the country, her name still lived, not in marble statues or dusty plaques, but in warm kitchens, wide porches, open arms, and gardens filled with colored greens and sunflowers. What began as one act of kindness had become a quiet revolution. In cities and towns, Chicago, New Orleans, St. Louis, Memphis, Oakland, and even as far as Toronto and Kingston, places named Gloria's Table sprang up like spring flowers after rain. They weren't franchises. They weren't built for profit. They were built on faith, on food, on the fire of a memory. Each Gloria's Table followed the original model. No IDs, no background checks, no questions. If you were hungry, you were fed. If you were alone, you were seen. If you were broken, you were embraced. Jaden the gardener. Jaden never left Gloria's house. He kept his promise. Now in his early 20s, he was affectionately known in Jackson as the Gardener of Hope. Every morning, just before sunrise, he walked through the soil Gloria once tilled and whispered a few words to her memory. He harvested greens, sweet potatoes, and herbs with neighborhood teens who used to run wild in the streets but now wore aprons and learned how to cook meals for others. Jaden wasn't just growing vegetables. He was growing men, boys who once thought their lives would end in jail gangs, girls who once believed they were worthless. He taught them how to plant, how to speak, how to listen, and, most of all, how to serve. One day, a young volunteer named Nia, no older than 10, looked up at Jaden and said, "You're like our new Grandma Glow." Jaden smiled through tears. "No, baby," he replied. "You are." Tasha's mission. Tasha, now a respected leader in National Social Services, had made it her life's work to carry Gloria's values into the system. She pushed for the GLOW Act, a new piece of legislation that supported grassroots food kitchens and neighborhood shelters run by locals, funded directly by the federal government. The bill passed in 2032, and with it came a renewed wave of support for healing homes across America. She traveled frequently, giving speeches, training workers, but always returned to Jackson every month, just to sit on Gloria's porch, now preserved as a heritage site and open to visitors. She often said, "Gloria didn't save the world. She saved the street she lived on, and that was enough to change the world." Marcus and Elijah. Marcus Lane, the tech mogul who started it all, had by now stepped back from his company. He focused his energy on philanthropy through the GLOW Foundation, which offered scholarships for youth raised in group homes, single-parent families, or shelters. He published a book titled Fed by Love, the story of a waitress who changed my life, which became a bestseller, adapted into a film, and used as teaching material in over 1,000 schools. His son, Elijah, grew up visiting the original garden in Jackson every summer. By the time he was a teenager, he'd helped build 3 more Gloria's Tables, one of them in Nairobi. At a high school graduation speech, Elijah told his classmates, "My grandma wasn't related to me by blood, but her love runs through everything I am, and I carry her plate into future." The last feast. On the 10th anniversary of Gloria's passing, people came from all over the world for the grand feast. The garden in Jackson was now larger than ever, with benches built from reproposed wood, wind chimes that sang softly in the breeze, and murals of Gloria's smile on every wall. Jaden, Tasha, Marcus, Elijah, and hundreds of others stood beneath the old oak tree, the one Gloria used to sit under, and together they shared a meal in silence. Then, one by one, they began sharing stories. A man who had once stolen food as a boy, now feeding others through a kitchen in Detroit. A woman who escaped an abusive home and became a lawyer protecting neglected youth. A pair of twins who had once been orphans, now raising a family of their own because of a meal they received long ago. There were no cameras, no headlines, just the sound of laughter, the smell of cornbread, the feeling that Gloria, Grandma Glow, was still there, watching, smiling, still feeding souls. The last words, on the back of the garden gate in Jackson, carved in wood and stained in golden letters, a message reads, "This place is not about food. It's about remembering that no one is too small to matter. That one plate, one act, one moment of love can feed a generation." And beneath it, in Gloria's own handwriting, "If you see someone hungry, feed them. And if you can't find someone hungry, look harder." Another child, another walk. It was raining again, just as it had the day Gloria first met Marcus and Tasha. The streets of New Orleans shimmered with puddles reflecting neon diner lights, horns in the distance, voices in alleyways, and the steady rhythm of a world that kept moving, too fast for some to catch up. In the corner of Canal Street in Claiborne, under the awning of a closed barber shop, sat a little boy named Carter, 9 years old, barefoot, wet, hungry. He held a tattered backpack filled with nothing but a broken toy truck and a pair of socks 2 sizes too small. His mother had disappeared 3 nights ago. His father had never been part of the picture. And now, he had nowhere left to go, except somewhere in his pocket was a torn flyer, folded, dirty, and almost unreadable. It had been handed to him by an older boy 2 days earlier. It read, "If you're hungry, if you're cold, if you're scared, there's a place for you. Gloria's Table, 1529 Basin Street." He got up, tucked the flyer into his backpack, and began to walk through the rain. The door that opens. Carter reached a small building surrounded by flower beds and soft yellow lights. There were children playing inside, even though it was late. He could see them through the window, laughing, drawing, eating. He approached the door slowly, his body shivering with cold, nerves, and the quiet fear that maybe, just maybe, he'd be turned away. But before he could knock, the door opened. A woman stood there. Her apron was dusted with flour. Her skin was dark and warm like molasses. Her eyes, deep and kind. "You must be Carter," she said, as if she already knew. He hesitated. "How?" She smiled and pointed up to a framed photo on the wall inside, an older woman in a rocking chair, surrounded by sunflowers and children. "That's Grandma Glow. She taught me how to see hearts before names." Carter stepped in. The warmth hit him like a wave. The smell of mac and cheese, fried okra, and sweet cornbread made his stomach ache with hope. He sat at the table. Someone handed him a plate. No one asked him to explain. No one asked him where he came from. He was fed. He was safe. Just like Marcus and Tasha once were. Just like Jaden. Just like hundreds before him. The training of a heart. Over the years, Carter became more than just another hungry child with nowhere to go. He became part of the house. Part of the story. He helped clean the kitchen, water the plants, wash the dishes, organize the donated clothes. He listened to stories of Gloria Roberts, how one meal changed thousands of lives. By the time he was 16, Carter had memorized everything about Gloria. He read her letters, watched the documentaries, tended her original garden during one summer trip to Jackson. At 17, Carter began speaking at schools. Not because he wanted attention, but because he knew what it felt like to be invisible. And when asked why he thought Gloria's message had spread so far, he said, "Because nobody expects to be saved by a waitress." But that's exactly what makes it powerful. She wasn't rich. She wasn't famous. She just gave when she had nothing to give. That's a kind of hero we can all become. The chain reaction. In the decades that followed, Gloria's Table became more than a place. It became a movement, a template for community compassion in places where bureaucracy failed. The model was studied in universities. The gardens became therapy centers. Former gang members ran kitchens. Foster youth became lawyers, teachers, and chefs. Carter eventually launched his own version. Second Plates, a nonprofit that partnered with restaurants to donate uneaten food nightly to shelters named in Gloria's honor. And in a ceremony streamed live to millions, Carter stood on the steps of the U.S. Capitol as a president of the United States signed the Gloria Roberts National Kindness Act, which mandated food security programs in every public school in the country. Carter was only 29 years old. Gloria's spirit returns. One evening, many years later, Carter, now older, graying, wiser, sat alone in the original Jackson garden. The sun dipped behind the oaks. Wind rustled the beans and kale. He closed his eyes and whispered, "You still here, Grandma?" And in the hush of the wind, in the rustle of the leaves, in the smell of cornbread rising in the nearby kitchen, he heard it, not with ears, but with a soul. "Always, baby, always." To be continued, because the kindest stories never end, because a full plate can spark a full life, because one woman, tired, unseen, overworked, dared to choose love every time the world offered her an excuse to do less. And now her name is spoken in 100 countries. Now her garden grows in every hand that feeds the hungry. Now her spirit walks beside every child who believes they are forgotten. But they are not, because somewhere a door still opens, and a plate is still served. Years passed, and decades folded into each other like the soft corners of a well-worn quilt. Gloria Roberts, once a nameless waitress in a corner diner, was now remembered across continents, not with statues or gold plaques, but through living spaces, quiet acts of kindness, and warm meals served to strangers who became family. In the year 2065, on what would have been Gloria's 100th birthday, a massive gathering took place in Jackson, Mississippi. But this was no ordinary celebration. This was the unveiling of the house with 1,000 doors. A living monument. The building had taken years to complete. Designed by architects who had grown up at Gloria's tables, funded by those she once fed, and built by the very hand she helped guide, it stood on the exact spot where her garden had once bloomed. It wasn't a museum. It was alive. It was made from wood and stone, recycled materials, glass etched with the names of every person who had ever passed through Gloria's original home. And true to its name, it had exactly 1,000 doors, each leading to a story, a room, a kitchen, a library, a greenhouse, a counseling center, a classroom, a bed for a mother and child, or a quiet space for someone who just needed to cry without judgment. At the heart of the structure stood Gloria's rocking chair, beneath an old oak tree preserved in the atrium, her shawl still draped across its back, her photo beside it, and engraved on the wall above. There's always one more seat, one more plate, one more chance to be loved. The final gathering. Carter, now in his 60s, stood before a sea of people, thousands gathered beneath silver streamers, sun canopies, and floral banners from every culture. He looked out at the crowd and began to speak. "We are not here because of a millionaire or a politician or a warrior. We are here because of a woman who worked 12-hour shifts, walked home in the rain, and gave her dinner to a hungry child. We are here because love was chosen again and again, when it would have been easier not to." He paused, his voice cracking slightly. "I was that hungry child. Many of you were too. And now look at us." Around him stood surgeons, musicians, farmers, teachers, astronauts, caregivers, youth workers, and children with shining eyes. All of them once broken, all of them now whole, because of her. The eternal garden. The final door of the house, door 1,000, led to a rooftop garden. There, vegetables grew beside flowers from every corner of the earth. Tomatoes next to tulips, basil beside bougainvillea, a harmony of cultures and colors. And in the center was a plaque, surrounded by candlelight, that read, "She fed the world with no cape, no riches, and no spotlight, only with her hands, only with her heart." Every week, a different child wore to the plants. Every month, stories were read aloud in her memory. Every day, at sunset, one meal was served at the rooftop table to someone new. No one knew who would be chosen, only that the seat must always be filled. The end, that is a beginning. Gloria Roberts never wrote books. She never ran for office. She never led armies. She just said yes when the world said no. She opened her door. She gave her plate. She chose to care. And from that choice came a wave of love that fed generations. Her story has now been passed through the lips of millions, in every language, across every land. And somewhere, right now, there's another Gloria. Maybe a tired grandmother. Maybe a young girl selling oranges. Maybe a man washing dishes in silence. Maybe you. Someone who will open a door to the next hungry soul. Because of her. Because love, once planted, never dies. It grows. The end.